I'm going to begin with you, Sam. Actually, you've called this story a film about hope in the most desperate of places. I was wondering, with that in mind, do you think this is a really good time for this film to be released?
I think that I feel like there is always the time for hope in the most desperate, and yes, now is a good time as it was back in '93. It's just we went over to the rehab facility where James had his treatment, and they said every the drug of choice and the crisis changes, and then it was alcohol, crack, cocaine were the big things, and now today it's opioids.
And I was wondering too, Aaron, obviously it's a skill all actors have to sort of learn, is the idea of shooting in non-chronological order. So you have to, but in this instance, because his journey is so specific to the period of time, was it quite a challenge to always get into his head at exactly the right moment across the course of the tale? Because he was always kind of fluctuating, wasn't he, between his emotional state?
Yeah, I think that's always the challenge when you're doing that on any film. But on this, we had obviously he came into the rehab with a face a bit smashed up, and he had to be fixed up along the way, and he got his teeth done and things like this. So we were running around in between getting prosthetic nose put on, and then next thing taking it off, and then putting it on later, and those are sort of things that kind of help where you are in your process as well. But it's always a challenge to stay in that headspace.
It was
dark.
I was going to say, it must have been quite, at the end of the shoot, it must have felt quite sort of exhausted, because it must have been quite emotionally straining for you.
Absolutely, yeah. You always get drained after doing something like that. Very physical and, mentally challenging too, and in a very sort of dark headspace. But it was difficult.
So how involved was James in this project, if at all?
James, from the very beginning, said, "I'm there if you need me, or not if you don't want me." And so there were times where he was at the end of the phone. I mean, he was always there to be supportive and helpful, so we could call him and just say, tell us about this person, this character, this moment. And so he was involved, but he wasn't in any way... you should think about it like this, or you should shoot it like this. It was much more, I'm there if you need me, and I'm not if you don't.
Because what was it like portraying him, in the sense that, I guess when you play characters who are based on real people, there's always a pressure, but knowing you're playing someone who's going to see the movie and is probably going to give you feedback must have added a bit of a real sense of, because knowing that you're depicting not just his story, but such a big emotional story for him, and he's going to see it. That must have been quite pressurising.
Yeah, I think there is a big pressure of that too. He's quite a specific... we decided Sam wanted more of a physicality to this story, and that's not James. He doesn't jump around and dance around like that. But so I had to kind of separate the two and make a decision, an artistic decision, rather than necessarily an authentic portrayal of him. So. But I think he seemed pretty pleased and extremely happy. I mean, he wrote us a very beautiful email afterwards, and a complimentary sort of email, and was very grateful for it.
And how vital is it, do you think, that we root for him? Because, to begin with, he makes it quite hard for us to get on board. But by the end, you do find yourself really hoping he gets through this kind of whole thing. But how important is that to the audience's investment, that we do find ourselves investing in his story and emotionally rooting for his kind of,
It's important, but what we didn't want to fall into the trap of is make him likable, because that feeling of likability with him and the story, it's not something we could gloss over and try and create something, palatable in a certain way. It had to feel very raw and very real, and you go on board with him through the adversities he has to face. And you go on board with him at first. The constant kickback of his reactions to where he is tough, and you kind of it pushes you back, but then he sort of draws you in through the gradual process of his survival.
And just very fine, I was wondering, because I was a big fan of the 50 Shades film, I thought you did a really great job of it. But I was wondering, because originally I sort of anticipated you may do the trilogy, but obviously having since left, that must be, now you've obviously presenting this movie, that must be a decision you feel so pleased to have made, because I guess when you do leave a franchise, it opens up a whole new world of stories for you to now tell. So, is it, having now made this and presenting it to the world, does that feel like a real decision that's been vindicated for you?
Well, this was so different to that experience. I mean, this was we shot this in 20 days on an absolute shoestring budget, and it was a real passion project from the heart. And I think, you know, everything that I learnt on 50 Shades really prepared me for doing something at such a pace under pressure, and so it's, you know, an extremely different film from what I made for 50 Shades. But proud of them both and achieving them both in under, you know, extreme circumstances in a very different way.